If you are familiar with the content on this channel, you know that I am a Suns fan. So, why is Devin Booker a fraud? Well, we'll find out in this Week 7 NBA recap. Comes out every Monday. The Pistons went 0-2 again this week. Another winless week. And my only takeaway is that I actually do believe they might lose 80 games. They have 2 wins on the season, but they can't win anything. And yeah, they're dreadful. They're going to lose probably 70 games this year, if we're being honest, which they might go 12-70 if they even get to 10 wins. It's been tragic. I feel bad for all Pistons fans. Shout out Crispy Flakes. And then we got the Wizards at 29. They went 0-2, but they were competitive against the 76ers as they lost 131-126. And in that game, Jordan Poole actually looked like a quality basketball player for one of the first times all season. And then they got beat up by the Nets in Brooklyn. But in that game, Denny Avdija, I can't pronounce his name, and Bilal Coulibaly both looked very good. Sorry if I mispronounced their names. I'm not good with pronunciations if you haven't come to know. But yeah, they both looked good in that game. But again, 0-2 week for the Wizards. So yeah, nothing new here really. Next, we got the San Antonio Spurs, who also went 0-2. And I just need to say, I do not care how generational of a talent Victor Wembanyama is. I do not want to see them playing on ESPN or TNT. They have not won a game in about over a month. They're on a 16-game losing streak. Stop showing them on national television. Wembanyama had his first 2020 game of the season and of his career, so that was nice to see. But yeah, 0-2 week. They lost to the Bulls, then they lost to the Wolves. But yeah, stop showing them on national television. Ja Morant is back in 4 games, and this week the Grizzlies went 1-1. I mean, the one win came against the Pistons, where Desmond Bane had 47 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds in their lone win. And then they lost to the Timberwolves, which me and probably all of you were expecting to happen. But yeah, 1-1 week, 4 games. Do they play 4 games this week? Let's check. Let's check their schedule. Let's see if Ja Morant's back next week. So Ja Morant will be back December 19th against the Pelicans, if the math is right. So yeah, next week's the last week without Ja Morant. So let's try and go for 2-2 if you're the Grizzlies. Try and keep what little hope you have left still alive. But yeah, I'm not holding my breath. The Portland Trail Blazers finally got Anthony Simons back, and that was a big sign. It's a good sign, even though they still went 0-2 this week. But in the loss against Golden State, Anthony had 28 points and 4 assists, and then in the loss against the Mavericks, he had 30 points and 8 assists. You really do love to see it, especially since he's one of the cornerstones. And then another cornerstone, Shaedon Sharpe, was also cooking this week, as he's been cooking all season for the most part. Yeah, he was doing his thing, but very worrisome. Scoot Henderson went 4-17 in a game, as we all know. He really needs to figure it out, but I don't expect him to figure it out this year. Maybe next year, but yeah, it's not been good. It's not been positive sign there, but everything else for the Blazers has been pretty positive, if you ask me. The Jazz had a dreadful week in their first game in Dallas. They lost by 50. And while they were getting beat up, they were running their mouths, trying to get in fights and whatnot. I didn't watch the game, obviously, since I didn't expect much from it. But everything I seen, players were getting frustrated by losing by 50. But, like, you got to have some feel. If you're losing a game that bad, you don't need to be saying nothing to the opposing team. You should just get the game over with and get out as fast as you can. They got smoked by 50 points. And then they lost to the Clippers. It was only 14 points. They didn't have Larry Markkinen again this week. He's been injured for the most part all year. But yeah, they went 0-2 with a 50-point loss. So no positive signs here at all. The Hornets come to us at 24. They went 1-1 this week. And Terry Rozier was cooking in both games. And he's quickly becoming one of the most underrated players in the NBA. They lost to Chicago and they beat the Raptors by 3. The Atlanta Hawks are still disappointing. They went 0-2 this week, with losses coming to the Nets and 76ers. And the loss against the Nets, the game ended with a controversial no call. Yeah, I'm not thinking too much of it, but the Hawks finally decided to play defense, but it was a one game that couldn't score. So sucks. They ended up losing. And then in the loss in Philly, they didn't have Trae Young, but it wouldn't have made much of a difference because they couldn't stop Embiid or Maxey as they both cooked them. But yeah, 0-2 week for the Hawks. It's still very, very disappointing. I remember when NBA had them at number 5 in their power rankings after week 2. Yeah, they're down to 23 for me. If you're still wondering if Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam can play together, they still can't. In the loss against the Heat, that was displayed. And then, obviously, as I say that, against the Hornets, they both cooked, as Scottie Barnes had a triple-double. Siakam played well, too. But those performances came against the Hornets, so take it lightly. Don't overreact to it. They can't play together. They need to trade Siakam ASAP still. And speaking of rosters that don't mesh well at all, we got the Chicago Bulls, who went 2-0 this week. And they're officially better without Zach LaVine. I know I just said they don't mesh well. Well, they're meshing well without Zach LaVine right now. Kobe White has been cooking in his expanded role. Sorry, I can't speak. And then DeMar DeRozan, he's been going off. Vucevic has looked good. Everyone has looked a lot better with Zach LaVine being out. Now, obviously, they played the Hornets and Spurs, so take it lightly. Take it very lightly. But there's been a lot of positive signs, so that's really a good sign, especially if you're like Kenny and a Bulls fan. But the bad sign is Zach LaVine is tanking all his trade value, so you're probably going to end up having to keep him or trade him for like a real bargain. At 20, we have the Warriors, who are so close to a 2-0 week, but in order to beat the Blazers, they needed a Steph Curry carry job. No other starters really contributed, except for maybe Draymond Green, who was assist shy of a triple-double in that game, but they only beat the Blazers by 4 points. And then against the Thunder, they should have won that game. Draymond Green, that was a tragically bad foul. They would have won that game if it weren't for that foul. It's a really bad loss, especially since Jonathan Kuminga had 24 points and 12 rebounds in that game. Klay Thompson was turned up too. Steph Curry turned it on in the end of the game, finished with 34. But it was a disastrous end, a disastrous OT, and yeah, they ended up losing a game they should have won in overtime against the Thunder. Houston Rockets came into this week 0-8 on the road, and then magically their one win on the road all year came in Denver against the Nuggets. Make it make sense, right? But yeah, they won that game and they beat the Thunder, so 2 very good wins this week. If they're more consistent on the road, they're going to jump straight up because their home record, they've only lost 1 game at home all year. And yeah, in that game against the Thunder that they won at home, Aaron Holiday was hit 6 threes. It's just performances like that. They got a lot of quality players on their team. And this roster, the chemistry is finally clicking, large part due to Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, but also in large part due to Ime Udoka. And when this roster's meshing, they're going to be a scary team in the West because outside of the Timberwolves, no one in the West has proven themselves to be significantly over the rest of the teams. Another 2-0 team, the Clippers. They still are way too inconsistent for me, but they did beat the Nuggets. They did beat the Jazz. In the Jazz game, Kawhi went for 40 on 23 shots. Vintage Kawhi right there. But yeah, there's a lot of positive signs this week. They looked better, but they're still inconsistent. So until they become consistent with this good play, I can't move them too high. But for 18 right now, I think that's good. Then we have a third consecutive 2-0 team. We have the Brooklyn Nets. They beat the Hawks behind Mikal Bridges masterclass. He's starting to look like his post-KD trade 2023 form. And that's a really positive sign. They play hard, they play good defense, and they win games. The Heat went 1-1 this week, and they're really starting to feel the absence of Bam because they've been slipping a little bit. In their W, they played in Toronto, had a really balanced game all around. But Duncan Robinson had 21, 6, and 7, and I never thought I'd see that type of stat line from him, but I did. And then in the loss against the Cavs, the bench looked better than the starters, and that's why they didn't win, essentially. They also couldn't stop Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, which is problematic. I really struggled ranking the teams that played in the in-season tournament this week because obviously they played the best of the best competition, But in my power rankings, even if you do have a week where you play the best teams, if you lose to them, you slip. And that's the case for the Knicks. They lost both games, but they played the Bucks and Celtics, so really unfortunate 2-game stretch. But again, there's teams that beat them both this week. The Indiana Pacers, they lost both games, so that's why they had to drop. But I don't think they're as bad as the 15th team in the NBA. And that's the same case with the 16th team, which is my Phoenix Suns. We went 0-2. Big goose egg. We lost to the Lakers. If you want to hear my reaction, see my reaction, I'll link that video at the end of this video, because I have some feelings about that, especially that timeout call. Then we lost to the Kings because De'Aaron Fox sauce and tossed us. Kevin Durant was out. Now, obviously, Beal was out. He hasn't played in a minute. But yeah, the main focus of the Suns this week is, why is Devin Booker a fraud? Well, the game against the Lakers really reminded me, and a lot of us, how much of a fraud you really are, Devin Booker. Now, I'm a Suns fan. Again, I love you, Devin Booker, but Game 7 against the Mavericks, Game 6 against the Nuggets, Game 6 against the Bucks, the 3 elimination games in the playoffs you've ever played against. 14 points, 5 assists, on one of probably the worst shooting splits I've ever seen from a star player. 30% from the field and 7% from 3. And the reason I need to talk about this today is because the in-season tournament game, you really didn't show up or perform well in at all. And that was an elimination game. But you have been historically horrendous in elimination games. Horrendous. 7% from 3 as one of the best three-point shooters in the league? What? But yeah, the reason I need to say it, I'm a Suns fan. I want to win the championship. We've traded for Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, Yusuf Nurkic, and a bunch of players to make it so you can win a championship as the best player on the Suns. Well, Kevin Durant has obviously been the best player on the Suns, and there's been a narrative that Devin Booker is better than Kevin Durant. That was the narrative last year, but he gets off easy because of Kevin Durant. Devin Booker is not as good as Kevin Durant. Let's just settle that debate if there was still a debate. We're settling that. But we've made all these trades for Devin Booker, and anytime we have to go into an elimination game and win, you have been so fraudulent in any game that matters. It is crazy. All right? So, when I say this, I mean absolutely no hate at all. The reason I'm saying this, I want to win the championship this year. I want to. But we can't win when you're performing like this in games that really matter. We can't. And you need to figure it out because you've been compared to Kobe. You've been compared to so many great players, all-time greats. Kobe's a top 10 player of all time, and you've been compared to him. But when the lights are the brightest, you always go away. The past 2 years, we've had horrendous losses. And they're large in part because Devin Booker has not shown up. So in order to win a championship, we need Devin Booker to play like how the media portrays him and how he thinks he is. Because if we're being honest, he does talk a lot, but he hasn't backed it up when it matters. And that's really getting on my nerves as a Suns fan. It's getting on a lot of people's nerves. So Devin Booker, please show up in the playoffs. I mean, absolutely no hate in this, but if you don't perform in elimination games, we'll probably lose in the first round, or we'll lose in a Game 6 and Game 7. But yeah, you need to lock in. But yeah, again, absolutely no hate to Devin Booker. I just want to win a championship this year, and we can't do it without him performing like Devin Booker. The Pelicans had both of their games this week, in-season tournament games. I had post-game reactions to them. So if you want to watch those, go wait till the end of this video and click on them when I put them at the end. And then the Cavaliers, they actually looked like a competent team this week. They've been one of the most disappointing teams, but they beat the Magic and they beat the Heat. Donovan Mitchell, he had 35 against the Magic, and then when they beat the Heat, he had played like he really wanted to trade to the Heat since he had 27 points. But the best part about his stat line, Donovan Mitchell had 13 rebounds in that game. Did not expect that from him. But they picked up 2 wins against 2 quality teams, which shows a positive sign. But yeah, they've been disappointing all year, but yeah, they moved up this week, so good for them. And then we got the Mavericks, who smoked the Jazz by 50. Then they beat the Blazers. It was basically a free week. Those two teams stood no chance. Neither of them have an answer for Luka. And then Kyrie, he got hurt in the Blazers game. It was a contusion on his heel, I think. I don't know where the contusion is, but either way, please get well soon, Kyrie. You've been amazing all year. Then we got the Sacramento Kings, the first game against the Pelicans. I had a post-game reaction to that. And then in the Suns, De'Aaron Fox proved again that when the lights become the brightest and when the game is on the line, he is going to be taking over games. The first 3 quarters, De'Aaron Fox didn't really do nothing. All right. Then he finished the game with 34 points and the W in Phoenix. 34 points. How many of them were in the fourth quarter? Like 23 of them. He went off in the fourth quarter. When the lights are the brightest, De'Aaron Fox always shows up. That's the type of superstar this man is. He is a top 5 point guard in the NBA. His supporting cast, outside of Sabonis, the starters have been so inconsistent and pitiful, really. Kevin Huerter's been really inconsistent. Keegan Murray inconsistent. Harrison Barnes, really no production offensively. Malik Monk off the bench has been very good, but Monk, Fox, and Sabonis, those are really the only 3 players consistent and doing stuff. And Sabonis always struggles against teams with quality bigs. So De'Aaron Fox has been really carrying this team, and he's not getting enough recognition for it. At 9, we have the Thunder. This is the youngest they have looked like ever. SGA obviously was good all week, but in the game against the Rockets, they lost. The Houston Rockets at home are fourth best team at home. So yeah, you kind of expected that. But in the game against the Warriors, obviously they were resilient. They won. They ended up winning this game. But in overtime, they got a 9-point lead, 10-point lead, whatever. But they almost blew it because they lost concentration. They started throwing the ball all over the place. And that was really concerning sign because obviously they've been really good this year, but they've had flashes of being really, really young. That's what's going to happen in the postseason this year because they have no experience. They almost blew a 10-point lead in overtime because they didn't know what to do. They were throwing the ball around. They lose concentration easy. They don't have a veteran presence on their team. Kendrick Williams, sure. Say Kendrick Williams. But they need a veteran presence. That's what they need at the trade deadline because that was really worrisome how they almost threw that game away. But yeah, they obviously went 1-1 this week. Got lucky against the Warriors, but yeah, they had to drop because we got a bunch of risers. But the Bucks also dropped. They dropped to 8. They had 2 in-season tournament games. Post-game analysis on both of them, but they beat the Knicks and lost to the Pacers. And speaking of the Pacers have leaked everyone this week. Now, I was very, very hesitant on putting them at 7 like I did. I was really hesitant to put them in the top 8, if we're being honest, because I didn't want to overreact to 1 week. But they beat the Celtics, beat the Bucks. Those were 2 very, very big wins. And then, so they went 2-0 technically, because the championship game doesn't count towards the record, apparently. I was wondering that, but officially it doesn't. But anyways, I don't want to react to 1 week, overreact to it. But you got to give them respect. Tyrese Halliburton has been phenomenal. I'm giving them respect by putting them at 7, but I definitely need to see it sustained because they've been very inconsistent as a team, and the defensive end has been atrocious. But yeah, I'm not gonna take anything away from this week that they had, and that's why I moved them to 7 this week. The Orlando Magic, they're slipping a little bit after that one stretch. Jalen Suggs got hurt this week. They went 1-1. They lost in Cleveland to the Cavs, but Paolo had 42 points. What a masterclass. And then they beat the Pistons. No further comments needed. Starting off the top 5, we have the Denver Nuggets. You could argue that they shouldn't be in the top 5. They lost in LA against the Clippers, and then they lost to the Rockets for their first home loss of the year. Obviously, Jokic had a very, very inefficient week and probably his worst 2-game stretch in a long time. But those 2 games weren't even that bad by him. That's the funny part. That just shows how great he is. They're struggling, the Nuggets, right now to win on the road. They're kind of like the Warriors from last year, the championship hangover. But the Nuggets are a lot better than the Warriors were last year. So I'm not overreacting to it too much because Jamal Murray, everyone's been in and out of the lineup. So can't overreact to it. I'm not taking them out the top 5 because they have earned our respect. But yeah, they definitely are slipping and need to figure it out sooner rather than later. Then at number 4, we have your in-season tournament champions, the Lakers. If you know me, you know I do not like the Lakers. I'll never root for the Lakers. But we have to give them respect. They beat the Suns, Pacers, and Pelicans and won the in-season tournament. I viewed them as contenders before this. It proves me right even more so. They would have been in the top 3, but I couldn't put them over the 3rd team because the 3rd team did beat them by 44 points. And the 3rd team is the 76ers, who went 2-0. Embiid had a 50 ball and dropped 38 in his 2 games this week, and then Maxey was cooking too. Obviously, the teams they played have pitiful defenses, as they played the Wizards and the Hawks, but that sounds like a Wizards and Hawks problem. And also Kelly Oubre came back, which was nice to see. But yeah, 2-0 week for the 76ers, and they come to us at number 3. Then at number 2, we have the Boston Celtics. I'm not going to talk about the Boston Celtics because I don't like the Boston Celtics, but obviously they got upset by the Pacers, even though the Pacers were the home team. And then in the game against the Knicks, they won by 10. Derek White went off, but Jaylen Brown got ejected in that game. Second funny ejection in back-to-back weeks for the Celtics. Last week it was Tatum, this week it was Jaylen Brown. Both of the ejections were funny, but I know the Achilles heel of the Celtics team. They cannot win games down the stretch. They really do fold down the stretch. That's why they lost last year to the Heat. That's why they lose a lot of the games they lose. Because let's be honest, on paper, the Celtics are really the best team in the NBA. It's not even close. But if they can't win games down the stretch, they're going to struggle in postseason play. So that's really the Achilles heel of this team. We saw that against the Pacers. They couldn't win down the stretch. And they had to stay number 2 because on paper they're just so very good. And they didn't have Porzingis this week, so yeah. But then at number 1, we have the Timberwolves, who will stay. This is like the 3rd or 4th week in a row. They're 17-4 now. Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns are proving everything I said in the offseason wrong. But I'm not complaining because I am rooting for this team in the long run. Anthony Edwards has been dealing with this hip injury, and he's been in and out of the lineup, yet they've still been 17-4. So obviously, they are the best team in the NBA as we speak. And that's going to conclude this video, the Week 7 NBA recap. I hope y'all enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. We post these videos every Monday, so make sure you don't miss one. And somewhere on the screen, you will find the link to the playlist of all my in-season tournament post-day analyses. Oh, I cannot pronounce that word. But anyways, have a good one. Bye.